Thanks for joining us tonight on Facebook for Think Big with Michael Zellner, powered by Platinum Jewelers. Joining me today on the podcast are Michael Williams and Tom Datro. Tom has been with the LAPD for 20 years and is currently a sergeant with the Los Angeles Police Department. He is also a podcast host of the podcast Policing in America, Race and Policing, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Michael is a military veteran. He's actually a military veteran. He was in the military for 21 years. He had over a 20-year career in the Memphis Police Department. And the last 10 years or so, he was president of the Memphis Police Association. He was a very strong and vocal leader with the police department and helped them in many ways, especially at the very end of his tenure, in helping them get their pensions and their benefits back, which we'll talk a little bit about today, what the city did to them back in several years ago. They're both extremely qualified to discuss the many different subjects we're going to talk about today. With so many things that we need to discuss, this is going to be part one of the series of the podcasts we'll be having. So if you don't hear something that we talk about today that you were wanting to hear about at some point, we will get there and we will cover that subject. We're definitely going to talk a little bit about the Tyree Nichols situation that happened here in Memphis at the beginning of January. However, both the local and the national media covered it in every which way but ever that can be done and talked about. And we all know what those former police officers and EMTs did. It was beyond what words can describe. Anyone who has any kind of sympathy, empathy, any kind of feelings at all was sickened by what happened here. And we're not just going to go over and have another play-by-play of the video situation again, because it's been done so many different times, and it's still actually being done by the national media today. A big part of what I'm going to do during these podcasts is read some different articles and talk about different subjects that I have found online with information and statistics, and let both Tom and Mike talk about those subjects and elaborate on them a little bit more, and take them wherever they feel like taking them. I asked both of them over the last several days, and they said they're open books and ready to talk about anything we want to, and hopefully people will see things from different sides that maybe they have not seen before. No biased opinions, no propaganda involved, just some honest assessments of situations that have happened, and some actually that maybe did not happen and where people have been misled to. We're not going to get into actual day-to-day politics today, because in my opinion, all that stuff does is just divides us, and it's not good for anyone anywhere. We'll get into some of the way that people think about different political identities about the police department, the killing of Black people, racism discussion that's going on with the police departments right now too. None of us are here to defend the actions of the bad and the horrible police officers that are out there, and there are some, but there's not as many as the national media pundits portray. And we're here to talk about some of those things, and hopefully talk about some of the things that maybe bring people together a little bit more, because right now we're in a situation where so many people are divided. We're not talking Democrat, Republican here. We want to show other sides of the issues that many people maybe never hear or read, because they maybe only watch one thing or listen to one thing and they never see another side. Here are just a few quotes from the national politician and media pundits without having all the facts in hands in many cases. Quote, "Policing in our country is inherently and intentionally racist," unquote. That was tweeted by Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. Quote, "We need to abolish American policing as it currently exists," unquote. That was Jason Johnson, an MSNBC pundit. And quote, "Dante Wright's killing was not a random, disconnected accident," unquote. And that was AOC, Congresswoman AOC. Is there racism in some policing and some racist police officers? Are they out there? Yeah, they're out there. They are. But those three quotes could not be anything further from the truth. Although, braying politicians and dishonest media narratives on both sides have convinced millions that systemic racism in policing has led to an epidemic of deadly officer-involved shootings in recent years, the actual evidence just does not support this. We will talk about that today, and we also will give the audience some statistics from both the Washington Post and USA Today newspaper. The first question I have goes back in 2021. This from Mike, this is for you first, and then Tom. The New York Post said, quote, Psychologists tell us that we're often motivated by subconscious emotions, telling ourselves a story that makes sense of our feelings. We reach for vivid images that are easily recalled and reinforce our emotion-laden stories rather than pay attention to what the data say. When it comes to racism, ideology, media exposure, and peer influences skew our picture of reality, unquote. What do you think about that quote from the New York Post about what the psychologist said? And, what do you think that the national media does or doesn't do about influencing the way people perceive those subjects? Mike?
Well, I definitely think that statement is true. I think the media has a great influence on how society is moving. They have the ability to set the tone nationally for how people think. However, I do think that, I was going into telling the story that when you said earlier, not all police officers are villains. There are a lot of police officers that go into the profession with a true and genuine desire to help, to defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution or the charters of the municipalities in which they reside, to protect the peace and to provide a environment that is conducive to positive living. I tell the story about my father back in 1968, right after a march here in the city of Memphis for civil rights. And we were approached by a police officer, and it was not a good interaction with my father, which actually made me want to become the police because, as you stated earlier, Mike, there are bad police out there. So let's get that on the table, But I think that is individual driven. And I think a lot of people also associate policing with back during the civil rights movement, when there was a movement in this country to possibly subdue that movement. And there were a lot of things done, and it was done on TV. And those images that the media put out there and that were actually happen have actually stained some people's minds and or give them the ability to reach back. But I will tell you that a lot of strides have been made, and especially here in the city of Memphis, when you have a population of almost 70% African-American. But I will also tell you that the police department is reflective of the citizenry here in the city of Memphis. And also that a lot of the police officers, as myself, were raised, born, experienced everything that has occurred in this city. And the last thing that I would want is for my sons, my grandsons, my nieces, my nephews to be subjected to a lot of the tyranny that the media is portraying, that a lot of the police officers are actually involved in. I will tell you, I'm a police officer, my wife's a police officer, my son's a police officer. And so we have a history of policing in my family. And we definitely have tried to and want to do the right thing when it comes to the citizens. And that's provide a environment that's conducive to me as a retiree now, being able to live in peace and in harmony and enjoy the fruits of my labor. A lot of the things that have occurred, and I'm not saying Breonna Taylor didn't occur. I'm not saying Tyrese Nichols didn't occur. And I'm not saying that none of those things happened. They did. But that was individual incidences that occurred, but nobody talks about. I think here in the city of Memphis, we handle over 1 million calls a year. So you're talking about one specific incident that occurred. And I'm going to even say that you have even more than that, maybe not to that magnitude that occur, but that is not reflective of the other individuals that are on the police department, the 99%, 98%, 97%, 96%, or what have you, that are out here on a daily basis, putting themselves in harm's way to protect the citizens here in the city of Memphis. And it's very evident because right now, Mike, as you know, we are mourning the loss of an officer who was shot at the library on Poplar on the 2nd of February.
Yep.
He was doing his job and he was shot by an individual who intended to do him harm. His partner, who had been on only a couple of days, was unfortunately put in a position to whereas he had to render that individual ineffective, and subsequently that individual was killed by a young man who had just came on the department a couple of days, and he was put in that situation. So to make a long story short, does the media have the ability to influence? Yes. In our subconscious, do we kind of carry all of that? Some people do. And they allow that to dictate how they feel about police officers on a whole, as opposed to looking at each individual occurrence that happens and deal with that. You know what I mean? If anybody is acting beyond the scope of the law, I'm one of those guys. And even when I was with the police association, I do not condone wrong, period. And we were very active in the community. So yes, I think the media has a big influence on how people perceive the police. But I'm also going to say this, Mike, some people have agendas and they take incidences like these, whether they're watching the news or not. It's just a platform for them to be able to further their agendas in the community, which you have a lot of ultra liberals that are saying, defund police. We need to do away with policing. But you also know that we have a serious crime problem here in the city of Memphis. So there has to be a parallel, and we have to be able to, as prudent individuals in this community that want the best for all involved, to be able to weed through the minutia and to deal with the facts at hand.
Absolutely. Tom, your thoughts?
Thank you, Michael. Eloquent. Very nice. So I would agree with what the newspapers are saying. We as a species are subject to a variety of external stimuli that impact the way we see things, the way the message is being framed. We've seen simple studies where a police officer comes up and they'll ask somebody, what speed was that car going when it smashed into that car? As opposed to, did you see what speed they were going when those two cars made contact? Just the way you frame the question tends to elicit a higher miles per hour average with people. So sure, we are easily manipulated. And so there is a ton of cognitive phenomena that happens, whether it's the availability to recall certain data or the familiarity of data or your confirmation bias. All these things coalesce so that I agree what that article was saying. Keep in mind, the writer of that article suffers from the same impulses as well. The journalists suffer from the same. This isn't a police issue. This is a human issue. We all have to battle this cognitive phenomena, if you will. Okay. And now the media, I'm in agreement with Michael on this. The media has a way that it shapes, and they've learned this. The media has learned as a business model, because I think all three of us are old enough to remember when the news was the news and it was hard news. And I believe I read somewhere when 9/11 happened and when they covered this 24 hours a day, no matter where you were, what they learned is people will keep their TVs on. People will watch the same videos and the same repeats. And that's a way to get viewership. And when you get viewership, you get advertisement. And that sounds very disingenuous, but it is just it's a business model. And, I quote Denzel Washington, you don't read the news or the newspaper and you're uninformed. You do read the news and the newspaper and you're misinformed. It has long since taken on a new role to shape a narrative. And it would just be nice. It would just be nice if both Fox, CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, The Atlantic, it would be nice if there was a little bit more a parity between various perspectives. But I think like Mike was saying, and you're both Michael, actually, you are both alluding to this. There's also tribes now that we've gotten into, and it no longer is disagreement something we look forward to. Like, oh, this is good. Now you can't even change your mind without being called a flip-flopper. Right. So there's a whole host of negative connotation that goes along with this new media that's out there. Almost, what would you call it? It's a for-profit media as opposed to a for-information media.
A lot of sense. Tom, do you think that cities like Memphis, LA, Chicago, Baltimore, St. Louis, New Orleans, and many more, can they, be saved from the people that only promote hate and seek only to, divide us further apart, seek to, actively breed and nurture, hate and resentment for that, was like Michael talked about, for that financial and the political gain too. I mean, can cities be saved from that at this point in time?
So I'm going to quote Michael on this, in that the vast majority of instances resolve themselves peacefully. So I think that is evidence for us that this still has a overall good, there is an overall good relationship between our department and our citizenry. Now there are flashpoints and there are moments that come up that strain that public trust. You'll hear these terms like they're making a withdrawal from the bank of public trust and whatnot, and then we got to replenish this and whatnot. But I think because, like Mike was saying, 1 million calls for service. I think in Los Angeles, there's 3 million calls for service and about 2,200 use of force instances. And out of those, maybe 50 are deadly force. Like, you're talking about lightning strike events. So overall, the short answer is yes. I think we can be saved, and we're proving it right now because the vast majority of agencies, departments are doing the hard work, and they're doing it well, maintaining that high success rate.
Michael, you and I had talked about, when Tyree Nichols, the funeral, all of a sudden Al Sharpton shows up.
Right.
A situation like that. And we want to believe that these people have the best interest of everybody at heart, but it's really difficult sometimes because we know that, these guys go around and talk about, they get their speaking fees and stuff like that. And unfortunately, a lot of times they're not there to bring the situation down to a calm level. They're there to make the situation, unfortunately, get a little bit worse in some situations. What do you think about that?
Well, I have to ask the question. We have a high crime rate here in the city of Memphis. And in recent days, when you talk about car break-ins, I think last night before last, we had a shooting, 10 people, 11 people shot, 1 died. We have incidences of 6 people being shot, 3 die. It's becoming so common occurrence that people are becoming desensitized actually to what's going on. But I never find any Al Sharpton. I never find any Jesse Jackson. I never find, and this is my city and I'm a Black man. I never find them, when I'm sitting here fighting the city and always ringing the bell saying, ding, 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 look, we got crime off the chain in the city. Ding, ding. Mm-hmm. We got citizens that are being killed. We got 78-year-old women that are being robbed in parking lots, standing next to security guards. We got young ladies that are being accosted in broad daylight here in this city. The other day, we had a truck back up to a Nike and the guys with a box truck, broad daylight, they get out and they're starting to load boxes into this box truck. The employees, who all I saw was African American, were trying to stop these guys because, this is their place of business. This is where they work. They're trying to stop them. And these guys pull guns, and quite naturally, all of the employees retreat, which is common sense. I see a Popeye's chicken being robbed in broad daylight, and the individuals that are robbing a Popeye's chicken are dragging individuals across the floor because they're scared, they're out of their wits, what have you. And nothing has been done to on my behalf, as far as I'm concerned, to address these issues. I took my daughter to the circus yesterday. I see glass all over the ground. They're breaking in cars left and right. I don't see a Al Sharpton. I don't see a Jesse Jackson. I don't see a whomever is coming here to speak. And the other issue that I have, Michael, a lot of news media, MSNBC, NBC out of New York, ABC out of New York, they called me to give interviews because, as you stated, I was very vocal when I was the president of the Police Association. So they wanted to know what I thought. And a lot of them already had ideas about what this was about. Was it about losing all of the officers? Oh, let's go down that path, Michael. No, my thing was, and I did not give any interviews because nothing has changed for me. Even when I was the president of the Police Association, I always said, let me get the facts first before I can make an educated decision or give a statement relative to this specific incident. I don't need the spotlight. I don't need to be putting things out there because the things that I say have consequences and repercussions. So therefore, I have to be very guarded, and especially, Mike, here in the city of Memphis. I personally don't believe myself to be all of that, but there are a lot of people that I run into on a daily basis that are waiting or were waiting for me to make a statement in regards to what was going on. So I have to be very cautious about what I say and not just fly off the handle. Well, now I got an Al Sharpton coming into this city, and he does not have all the facts. The only thing he knows is what's been put out in the news media, because he was in New York or Detroit or California or wherever it was he was, and we're here at ground zero, and I don't have all the facts. So how can he have all the facts? But he's going to come in here and he's going to start speaking his normal tone to the citizens of the city of Memphis, and I have issues with that. But I also know that he gets speaking fees, whether you're talking 40,000, 50,000, what have you, to come in to give his perspective of what's going on, when actually a lot of times it's a skewed perspective and it's not an educated perspective, and it's, what people want. But remember earlier, I alluded to, there are people with agendas, Michael. And when things like this happen, they want to further their agendas. Like I saw when they had the march, the Socialist Party in here. And I'm like, what? Where did they come from? But guess what? Somebody paid a lot of money to bust these people in.
Yes, they did.
They could get this national exposure as they're marching with their signs. So I think we have to be very careful. And I'm not for, a lot of these outside individuals coming in to, he wasn't giving what I believe, okay, as a citizen of the city of Memphis. He wasn't giving what a lot of people believe. But you also have those individuals, as we stated earlier, that the news media has already skewed to say that there is a race problem. When, I think they were very, very, very stunned when they saw that all 5 police officers were African-American, because everybody was waiting to see if they were Black or white, and now you have one white officer who was part of the initial stop, but they want to roll him into the actual beating. And it's kind of like, hold up, stop. Yeah, he was there at the initial stop, and he wasn't charged or anything like that. Yes, he did use the taser, but they were trying to subdue the guy who was trying to get away at that particular time. And you can use the minimum amount of force necessary to take an individual into custody. He did not use lethal force. Yes, he did use the taser, but guess what? It is authorized. Okay. And what I'm starting to see, and I'm starting to get a little frustrated with as well, and I know you haven't asked me this question yet, but now they're trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know, it's kind of like we're gonna, you know, roll it all into one, and they're offering up sacrificial lambs, and I don't like that, you know, because they want the problem to go away. And I'm not going to say unfortunately, but you know, we have a white mayor who has stewardship over a predominantly African-American city. So the constituency in this city, which is predominantly African-American, has the ability to elect, unelect individuals that are going to serve in that position. And he's kind of caught in a quandary as well. And I do understand, because he is Caucasian, that he does not want to seem or to give the impression as though he's leaning too far in supporting the police. But for me, it's a clear-cut case of this went bad, it went bad real fast. So we have to have individuals that are going to stand up, whether you're Black or white, because as you know, Michael, I've said a lot of things that the Black community does not like. Like, we have to take responsibility for a lot of the things that are going on in our community. And they'll go, Michael, oh, you're anti-Black. No, I'm a realist. And it's almost like an alcoholic. Until you admit you have a problem, you will never be able to correctly address the problem if we're always trying to deflect. So no, Michael, I'm not for individuals like that coming in at this particular time.
You know, they're bad, corrupt, and racist people in every single profession. I mean, they're bad and corrupt, racist doctors, they're preachers, accountants, politicians, plumbers, entertainers, teachers, principals, and so many more professions. And they do some horrible and disgusting things. However, we never group them all together and say, well, if that doctor right there does something bad, then all other doctors are bad and corrupt and they're racist. You know, why do you guys believe that it's always different for police officers in these situations? They're always grouped together, where if it's one bad cop, they're all bad. Mike, and then Tom.
Well, you know, like, you know, I think that it's interesting because there are undercurrents that occur in every city. And, you know, you have individuals that believe, you know, because it's a paramilitary organization, then they have the ability to mobilize. They have the ability, you know, you hear they're a bunch of they are gang themselves. And, you know, a lot of times when you're out here in the streets, Michael, you know, since Tyree Nichols incident has occurred, we've had a police officer shot. We have officers that are being shot at in this city. And I have not heard anything about that on the news, but because of my relationship with the police department, I know this. You know, you almost give individuals the what they feel, and especially you're empowering and emboldening criminals, because it's kind of like, because you don't say, okay, this incident happened, we're going to deal with this incident. And I think that the mayor dealt with it swiftly. I have issues with CJ Davis and some of the things that she's done, but guess what? She dealt with it swiftly. All right. So a lot of people, even Ben Crump or whatever his name is, the lawyer, he is stating this should be the model for the rest of the United States because they dealt with it so fast. And I don't have a problem with dealing with issues like this in an expedient manner, because I don't condone wrong. But at the same time, those same individuals have to be the ones to stand up and say, you know, this is this incident, but I am not going to tolerate at any occurrence you out here shooting at police officers or making police officers targets, because guess what, Mike? A lot of them are citizens. A lot of them up in this city. A lot of them have family members. You know, when I look at my family, I'm a native Memphian. So I got sisters and brothers and nieces and nephews and uncles and aunts and cousins and daughter-in-laws and cousin-in-laws and on and on and on and on. And when you look at almost 2,000 police officers here in the city of Memphis, which was once 2,500, a lot of them have families larger than mine, because I have what is considered a small family, but their families are larger than mine. So regardless of who you're dealing with on the police department, they're going to have some connection to some people in this community. So therefore, you know, nobody, because when you go to a police officer's graduation, all you see is proud family members, because these individuals have achieved something that a lot of people only aspire to achieve. And also, Michael, and I'm gonna pass it on, to whom much is given, much is required. So I think that society looks at the police a little bit differently, because they do have a lot of power. They do have a lot of authority. And it's incumbent upon us as police officers to safeguard that power and that authority. And I will tell you, for the most part, most people do. But I'm also going to tell you that you have to be careful in cities like the city of Memphis, because just like we were talking about a lot of the citizenry becoming desensitized, when you have officers, and I'll give you one day in the occurrence of me working out there in the streets. I show up on a call, shots fired, shots fired. I got a woman down, man down, shot in the neck, shot in the face, right? Come to find out, I'm sitting there, don't die, don't die. I'm working on him. I'm trying to keep him alive, and he died, right? So we deal with that scene and that situation. And this is a true story. I get up from that, get back in service, shots fired, shots fired. Go to an apartment complex, 10-year-old boy shot in the face. He died. So on one day, Michael, this is just one day out of a 20-year career, I got 2 people dead in my presence, and I'm dealing with this. And then most police officers have serious problems when it comes to children, and children being harmed or women being harmed. So, you know, when you're dealing with this, a lot of times your training kicks in and you just don't automatic pilot, and you're just dealing with it. But once it's all over, you have to go, Jesus Christ. So when I'm telling you 10 people were shot over here the other night, that's 10 people. 5 people shot over here, 4 people shot over here. And now they're using these switches, which are turning these semi-automatic weapons into machine guns. And when they start spraying, they're hitting people all over the place. And we have a lot of children that are being harmed. You have a police force that is being traumatically affected as well. So I think we have to be careful. And I think there have to be mechanisms put in place so that these officers are allowed the ability to decompress, deal with a lot of the traumatic issues that they have, because a lot of them don't know they have them. Okay. I equated to, and I'm gonna shut up. I jumped into Kuwait during the Gulf War. I was with 5th Special Forces Group. I got minefields down on the ground. I'm up in the air. I'm trying to make sure I don't land in a minefield or don't get killed coming down. And then I get on the ground and it's like, whew. So now we gotta find what's going on. We go up the Al Basra Highway, which is called the Highway of Death, burning bodies everywhere, body parts everywhere, stuff blown up, you know, and this is me. And it's kind of like, Jesus Christ. And quite naturally, the United States government says now that I have post-traumatic stress disorder, and I had to find ways of dealing with that. Well, I equate a city like Memphis, when you have crime on the magnitude that you have, officers are in a combat zone, because remember, I just told you, officers are being shot at, you know, on a daily basis here now. So how do you take them out of that environment, allow them the ability to decompress, the ability to deal with those stressors and place them back in? Because even in a combat zone, Mike, you can only stay in there for so long. They pull you out and send you to the rear so that you can decompress, so that you can get out of that environment. But every time these guys get on a squad car now, your hypervigilance is through the roof, and your endorphins kick in. You know, you just up all the time. So it could lead to some bad situations. I'm going to tell you. You know. So anyway.
Your thoughts on that? You and I talked a little bit about, this about the other professions too. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I almost want to touch a little bit too on what I'm going to say, Mr. Williams, because you're both Mike. So,
Mike is solid.
Thank you, Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Right. So there was so many good things there. And if I'm your original question, why is it this broad brush? Why is it, one cop does something and all of a sudden police, George Floyd happened and they're protesting in Reykjavik, Iceland.
Yeah.
They're laying on the runway in Heathrow Airport. So if I'm trying to be generous, what I'm gonna say is there's a historical precedent that was set because at one time in this country, police were unfair. Police were not, or even if it was unintentional, they were enforcing laws that were later revoked from the books. So there is some historical component that is still a memory for people, and there are echoes of this in society. And so you are held to a different standard. You swear this oath in front of God and country, and there is this idea. Now, I think one issue is you swear this oath, all these expectations are thrusted upon you, and then, like Mike was saying, we don't train them enough. We don't decompress them enough. One point, my doctoral work was on chronic sleep deprivation and the decline in human performance and how that intersects with law enforcement. Think about how broken this is. The trucking industry, the rail car industry, the shipping industry, and the airline industry all have sleep minimums, or they're called away from work minimums. Even our firefighters have beds in the firehouse. Nobody is under any false pretense that firefighters are awake 24 hours a day. Everybody's comfortable with them sleeping because you don't want somebody that's been up 23 hours rushing to save you in a house. But our officers, for whatever reason, it's this old bygone era of we're just going to grind these men and women to the bone. We're going to work them at nighttime. Then we're going to send them to court in the morning. And then we're going to make it a badge of honor to work on 3 hours of sleep. Now, I'm not going to say that these officers are justified with Mr. Nichols. That's not it. But just the larger point is where you're going to have mistakes made when you are just running your personnel into the ground and you're asking them to do more and more. So I think there's an unrealistic expectation. Now, I think sometimes we do a little this to ourselves. We very much so embrace being called Memphis' finest and NYPD's finest and Chicago's finest. We love that. Well, like you were saying, and I'll paraphrase it, with great power comes great responsibility. So if we're going to carry that burden, we need to make that a priority for us as well. I also think as an agent of the government, anytime the government kills its own citizen, accidental or intentional, it's going to have a bit of an outrage to it. Now, I don't think the news helps us in many ways. They're going to exploit that. I was looking this up as y'all were talking about, Mr. Sharpton. And how about this? A political leader who seeks support by appealing to the desires and prejudices of ordinary people rather than by using rational argument. That is the definition of a demagogue. And this is what Mr. Sharpton certainly appears to be. He doesn't know anything about the case. And like Mike was saying, a leader comes out and says something like, it would be irresponsible of me to give you my opinion because I don't have all the data. Now, I understand why it looks bad. I understand why you feel this way. However, I don't have the luxury of making an assessment because my opinion matters and I need more data. So as a responsible leader, I can't give you an opinion. I'm sorry. But as soon as I get more data, I will. And I will tell you exactly what's going to happen. But I can assure you that in the meantime, all the I's are being dotted, all the T's are being crossed. There's a full investigation underway. And we will work tirelessly to get to the bottom of this. Like, that's a measured, controlled, professional leader. A leader tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And we have too many people telling the masses what they want to hear. And then we create terms for this, right? Like dog whistles and such. Go ahead, Mike, you're going to say something.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. And so, Michael Zellner, what did I answer the question, or was
Absolutely.
there a second part to that?
No, that was exactly what I wanted
Okay.
from you. You know, and going just a step further, you know, speaking of like things like what Al Sharpton does, there was an article in USA Today. It said, quote, "When the officers are Black, Tyree Nichols' death raises tough questions about race and policing. They asked, quote, so-called experts and activists and attorneys, and they told USA Today the race of the officers involved is far less important than the race of the victim. They said that a, quote, historically biased culture of policing, unquote, puts Black people at risk regardless of an officer's race. So many people have called these, you know, 5 Black officers white supremacists. You know, why do you believe that this has happened in this situation, and it continues to happen even when it's Black officers that are beating and killing, you know, a Black man?" Tom, and then Mike.
So I will say it goes back to what we talked about earlier. There is a cognitive phenomena that's happening. And when you are confronted with facts that contradict your worldview, something called cognitive dissonance comes in, and you are going to now do mental gymnastics to make your point of view match the narrative, your worldview, because it's easier. It's not better. It's easier to do this mental gymnastics than to say, maybe I'm not looking at this right. Maybe I'm wrong. Could you imagine if Ben Jones came out and said, well, I'll tell you what, I really missed the mark on this. And I think people would like that. I think people would like, but gosh, being right is more important, even when you're not be right, but just to say it, you know, you are going to go down with the ship. Michael, I'm sure you're going to have a little bit more eloquent way of working at this, but that's my answer, is that people just can't stand being wrong. So they're going to do mental gymnastics to make whatever data fits their worldview, no matter how absurd it sounds.
Mike?
No, I am in agreement with your assessment. You know, like you said, Mike, you know, you're going to say that these 5 Black officers are white supremacists. That's stupid. However, it kind of plays into the narrative that you're trying to portray, in that all police officers are bad. Because as I stated earlier, you know, everybody was shocked when they found out that these police officers were African American, Black. Now, me personally, I did watch the video, and I'm not going to go in depth about the video and all of that, but I watched the video. And I, as a police officer, you know, I kind of watched everything that was going on. I think it's so unfortunate that they have not showed, or I don't know if they have, what all led to the stop itself. But a lot of it looked personal to me. I don't know why. I don't know if feelings were hurt. I don't know if because he ran away or he was able to get away, then that drew some, you know, they went into hyper-driven mode, and it's like, God dang it, you got away from me. You got to pay a price. You know what I'm saying? So that was an individual incident. That was not a reflection. And I know other people are coming forward to say that this particular team, I haven't heard anything about any other team, but I hear them say this particular team, this is not the first time that they've done that. So if that's the case, to me, that's a bad team. That team needs to be dealt with, what have you. But at the same token, you know, as I stated earlier, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater and throw everybody into the category that this is reflective of the entire police department, because as all of this is going on, you still got officers talking people off the bridge that are trying to jump off the bridge into the Mississippi River. We got officers that are saving people. We got officers that are responding to calls. We got officers that are being injured because they put themselves in between individuals that seek to do citizens harm and innocent citizens. So there's nothing done. And a lot of times you don't have the news media reporting that because that's good news. No, we want this tragic. We want this bad. We want this, all of the bad things that are going to happen because that's sales. But we don't want to talk about the fireman getting the kitty out of the tree because that's old. We don't want to talk about all of the times when officers are finding, they have these silver alerts or what have you, where these individuals that have dementia, they walked off from the homes. I mean, things like this are occurring every day. Young girls that are being used as sex trafficking or what have you. They're recovering people every day. Individuals are being locked up because they're pedophiles and they're taking advantage of children every day. And they're locking up. I think the report said they locked up 2,300 individuals for stealing cars, but only about 20 are actually in jail because they're releasing them. So now they're back out here again, stealing cars. And as you know, Michael, we have this major epidemic going on right now that with car thefts, Hondas and Hyundais and I think it's
Kias
and all of that. So, okay, so if we have all of this going on and we have officers that are standing in the gap, and we got officers even as recent as the 10 individuals that were shot, they already have some of those guys in custody. You know what I mean? They have some of the guys in custody already, right? Now, the question is, what is the judicial system going to do with, or how they're handle these people? Okay. So I just think that, we have to be careful. We have to keep sounding the alarm, and we cannot allow those individuals that are trying to portray all police officers as white supremacists, even though they're Black, individuals that seek to do harm. No, there are individual police officers that are bad, and those individuals need to be dealt with, because even the current here in the city of Memphis, I don't know if you remember, I started an organization when George Floyd was killed. Not started an organization, but a movement called Police Officers Against Injustice. And I met a lot of resistance, believe it or not, within the police ranks. However, a lot of police officers got on board because there are a lot of police officers that do not condone things that happen. And even as far as Mr. Tyree Nichols and his death, there were a lot of police officers that were stepping up saying, no, this ain't why I signed up. Whereas in the past, individuals thought about the thin blue line, and individuals may not have broken ranks. But it's becoming more and more, even on the police department, that individuals want to defend all of the good things that they've done. They want to defend why they came on the police department. They want to defend the individuals that work alongside them on a daily basis that they know for a fact, are putting everything that they have on the line. To be able to provide the best quality core services to the citizens of the municipality in which they work.
Mike, I want to read to you in our audience a quote from a longtime police officer who I've probably known for, probably close to 15 years, and you've known a lot longer. He obviously, for protection on several levels, wants to remain anonymous. He said about
John.
he said about you, quote, he himself told them years ago what would happen if the city cut pay and benefits, as well as if they did not increase the pay and incentives. That would be 1, a max exit of good police. 2, crime would skyrocket. Three, we would get bottom of the barrel applicant police, which would cause more problems in the long run. The city was told what would happen and they scoffed at it. The city is responsible for putting these people in blue uniform and then place the blame on all the police after they put people on, quote, our team that we all argued that we did not want. Good police were against lowering of standards because we have to work with these officers and then we all get to take blame and responsibility for their actions. The city likes spreading the blame, not on the bad actors, but not blame other officers that had little or no contact or time on the scene who were not even part of what happened, supervisors, fire personnel. They want to blame everyone but themselves, unquote. Mike, if you would, please tell us a little bit about, what happened back in 2014, maybe even a year or two before that with the city council where, pretty much everything started to change here in Memphis, where the police and many other, city organizations ultimately led to losing hundreds of officers and led to these horrible hiring practices.
Well, there was a time when, and I don't say all business, big business, but a lot of businesses within municipalities like Memphis, Detroit, Chicago, different places like that, they found that the tax base is a place where they can get revenue to do public-private partnerships. They can come in and get money to build hotels. They can come in and get money to do all of these things. But they realized that the biggest portion of the municipality's budget is personnel. And one of the biggest portions of the personnel budget is law enforcement and fire. So what they did was start attacking when in the past, even though they may have cut the wages or not given raises to the mainstream employee base, they left police and fire alone. Well, guess what? Now they wanted to come after the bigger budgets, which was police and fire. So in 2000, I believe it was 12, they did a 4.6 pay cut. They had told us that they weren't going to give us a raise, and that was it. And we fought, and they said, we're not going to give you a raise. But when it all came out, the administration offered to the city council, which the current mayor, Jim Strickland, was a city council person at that time. They did a 4.6 pay cut to all employees. When you looked at households like mine, I'm a police officer, my wife's a police officer. Not only was that a 4.6 pay cut in our overall income, it was a 9.2 cut of all of my income in my household. So we started trying to fight to get that back. And I told them at that time, I said, I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to start losing police officers because at that time, other municipalities were not doing things like that. So as we went along, they took the insurance from the retirees. So that was a major, major foobar. And I put up billboards in accordance with the permission of my board of directors to every entrance in the city. And it said, danger, do not enter. This city does not support public safety. And a lot of people got mad. And at that time, I was telling them that you may not like what we're putting up, but I'm telling you what's going to happen. You're going to have a mass exodus of police officers. And your crime is going to go up because at that time we had right at 2,500 police officers. And I believe it eventually went down to about 1,900 and it has not recovered since. And they're giving $15,000 sign-on bonuses. They did a whole lot of things. But here we are now. This happened in 2012. We're talking 10 years later. Crime is through the roof. They cannot recruit officers into the city. So you're having to work the officers that you have even more. It's like riding them hard, putting them up wet, and then bringing them right back out the barn. We got precincts that have cars that are down because they're in motion so much that you have officers that are sitting around precincts because they don't have relief cars when they get to work. They have to wait for the other officers to come back out the field, when the whole premise is we come in early, we go out in the field, then the other officers retreat from the field. So now, Michael, you have periods whereas the city is not covered because you don't have enough cars out there on the streets. The other thing is they told me that I would never be able to get those benefits back for those officers. And one of the last things that I was able to do prior to me retiring, because I went to the city council and I said, look, you got to do something. If you do not increase the pay for one of the, and we're listed as per capita, we were either listed at number 1 or number 2 as the most violent city in the nation per capita. So I'm like, you got to do something. And they were like, well, I asked them to put a referendum on the ballot for a 0.5 public safety tax. And they wouldn't do it. They told me, Michael, you have to be kidding me. And I said, look, I'm asking you because we have to do something. We can't just continue to talk. We have to put mechanisms in place. So they told me that they weren't going to do it. So, and they kind of scoffed at me. So I went back to my executive board, me and Thomas Malone, who is the Fire Association president. We got together and we spent about $1 million bringing in a team to get the signatures to actually get it put on the ballot so that we could get the benefits back. So believe it or not, we got almost 150,000 signatures, got it on the ballot. The citizens resoundingly supported it and they actually voted it in. So now the city gets anywhere from $54 to $72 million a year, strictly for public safety. So now that's the money that they're using for the bonuses. That's the money that they're using to give $15,000 sign-on. Plus, because of that, they have restored all of the benefits that they took away from us because now they have a base to do it. And the way we put it on the ballot, because we understood that we couldn't just do it for police officers, but we did it for pre-K. This is money that's residual money for the pre-K program. This is money for road paving, which we have a serious problem here in the city of Memphis for some reason with road paving. So all of that money is strictly dedicated to public safety, pre-K, and road paving. So they pretty much restored all of the benefits that they have, that they called themselves taking away from us, and they said that we would never be able to do. And after I did that, that's when I retired, because I wanted to leave on a high note and say, hey, look, move on to something else. Let these young people do something. So every year now, and now they have so much money, Mike, they don't know what to do with it. So they are reaping the benefits of all of the hard work of the Memphis Police Association and the International Association of Firefighters here in the city of Memphis. So our young people are being educated. They're able to go to pre-K now, which they had cut those programs, you know. So they were able to restore all of that, and they have money to actually pave the roads. The roads are not as bad as they used to be. Still have issues and problems, but they're not as bad as they used to be. So they are, and I always remind Mayor Strickland, he does not like me, and I could give a damn because I am a citizen of this city. I fought for my country. I fight for my community, and he can go have a Coke and a smile, and everybody know that's how I feel. So because they made us work hard in defending this community, they made us work hard in trying to acquire the resources that they had all the time, that they had prioritized to, and in his words, redeveloping the core of the city, as opposed to spending the money on the citizenry of the city. And because of that, now we are incurring a lot of the problems that we are occurring in the city, because one of the things that I'm a firm believer is that they allowed blight to come into the inner city because that's where most of the projects were, but that's prime real estate. So you allow it to go down, become crime ridden, drug infested. Then what they started to do was move all of the individuals out of the projects and put them all over the city, which spread the crime everywhere now, as opposed to relegating it to a specific area. But as they did that and they allowed blight to come in, you were able to buy cheap, redevelop. Now you sell for high. And as you know, Mike, now apartments are going for 2,500, one bedroom studios. That is unheard of here in the city of Memphis. But that's because now they've redeveloped all of that real estate that they acquired, which were public housing projects. And now they are pristine apartment complexes that they, once again, did public-private partnerships with. So some people got rich, all right, in the process, using Hope 6 grant money to be able to redevelop. But this is the price that they're paying, Michael, because, and I'm gonna shut up, even when I was growing up, and I'm gonna say the city was actually, the leadership was predominantly white in the city of Memphis. But we had programs, we had things that allowed individuals like me that grew up near the projects to have hope, to dream, to aspire. Everybody in my class aspired to go to college because they wanted to be a productive part of society and do good and great things. But now, because these young people, they don't think that they're going to live to be 25, so they don't care. They don't think that they're going to be able to make it out. They don't know if they're going to live past tomorrow. So therefore, they don't mind taking your car. They don't mind taking your life. They don't mind robbing you. They don't mind raping you. They don't mind, because now they see all of this good stuff. And one of the things that I told Mayor Strickland, and he was pissed at me about that too. I said, you can build it, but they're going to come and take it. I told him that a while back.
What happened in Liberty Park? I mean, just the first weekend it was open, all the cars that were broken into there.
That's what I'm talking about. You can build it, but if you cannot protect it, or if you have created an environment that is not conducive to people that you have the haves and the have-nots. And if you have an environment to whereas you have these have-nots and they see those individuals over there that they think have, and I will tell you, the other part of the problem is when you talk about, and I say I piss the Black community off with this, nobody's going to come in here and save us or you or whomever in the inner city. We got to do it ourselves. So one of the questions you asked earlier, I think, was, do you think you can turn it around? I know you can turn it around, but they're not going to like the way that you're going to have to turn it around, because it's going to take cracking down on a lot of the things that have become acceptable in this community. Because of the advent and bringing in of the body cameras, now you get to see what a lot of police officers saw on a daily basis. And it ain't pretty. And because it's not pretty, now you're sitting here yelling about, oh, he hit him. Well, guess what? He had a gun in his pocket. Oh, he such and such and such and such. Now, don't get me wrong. I told the officers, hell, I have to ask for and kind of ushered the cameras in, because I told the officers when everybody was yelling about the cameras, I said, those are good things. You know, you got them. Use it to your advantage. Use it to your advantage. Now, some of these not astute police officers tend to forget, or they want to cut them off because they want to do what they want to do. Oh, well, you pay a price. Now, some officers truly forget to turn them on, because if I'm driving down the street and I don't have one that's automatically activated by the car, once I turn the lights on and I see a crime in progress and I jump out of the car because my mind is saying I need to get there and I need to help, but I forget to hit that button, or my car don't automatically turn it on. Now you want to prosecute me because I forgot to turn my camera on, even though I saved somebody's life. At some point, common sense has to come into play, you know? And you and I both know, Thomas, that a lot of times The police departments try to err on the side of caution, and they will tell you, I'm going to charge you. You'll get off down the line, but we're going to get through this process right now. And we're going to, especially the command staff and all of those guys, because I used to have these heart to hearts with them. Chief, this is wrong. Yeah, Michael, I know it's wrong. But guess what? Chief, you got a lot of loopholes, and I'm going to fight this and I'm going to get it back. Yeah, you're going to get it back later. But right now, I got to get through this process. Oh, thank you. So you're going to upset this officer's life, his family. Anyway, God.
Tom, if I had to guess, there's things like this similar that happens in LA and other cities too. We, need way more police officers, good police officers, of course, to protect us, bail, having no bail policies, very low bail, the defunded police movement. It's done so much to set the country back, everywhere. And I want to read this article and then I want to get your comment on it. This is from today from Fox 13 Memphis. One teen and another man charged with breaking into cars at local restaurant. Police have arrested 2 men in connection with car break-ins in East Memphis. Montez Carr, 19, and Javon Jackson, 20, were charged of theft of property of a motor vehicle between $10,000 and $60,000, unlawful possession of a weapon, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, evading on foot, leaving the scene of an accident, and reckless driving, according to a Shelby County arrest warrant. Memphis police noticed a stolen Infiniti prowling unattended vehicles at Huey's restaurant at 408072 Poplar near 1 p.m. on February 18th. Police said officers watched one person break into with sunroof of an Infiniti and was programming a key for it, the report said. After seeing police, the person then returned to the original stolen car and it left the parking lot. Police chased the car when it struck a Honda on Mendenhall Road north of Poplar before traveling into an alley and striking a dumpster. 5 men exited the car and ran away. 4 together toward Poplar, the other in another direction. He was found hiding in a shed and arrested. Jackson was arrested north of Poplar after a foot chase. Police located a pistol determined to be a stolen weapon from Nashville with the subject as well as cash. Carr was arrested in a dumpster on Mount Moriah Road, taken to St. Francis Park Medical Facility after complaining of shortness of breath, as was Jackson. Police also retrieved items including a backpack containing a car key fob programmer, ammunition, camera equipment, various credit cards, IDs of victims, children's shoes, and a bass guitar. They determined that 4 cars had been broken into at the restaurant. Montez was released after posting bond. Jackson was released on his own recognizances, according to Shelby County jail records. What the heck is going on in this country with this low bail, no bail, and these people? Because did they think that all of a sudden, oh, okay, I got caught, I'm gonna, my ways are gonna get better now, I'm not gonna do that again? That's not happening.
So if I'm going to try to be as delicate as I can, and I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt, there are certain members of our society who believe, and I'm going to hope that they honestly believe, that there were systemic injustices, and these injustices disparately impacted certain communities, and they needed to fix this. Now, they tried with police, and that only got them so far. So they realized, well, we've done all these interventions with police, and yet we still can't move the needle. We're now going to go to a different part of our government, the judicial part, and we're going to start looking at prosecutors. And at the end of the day, police often get labeled with putting people in jail, but we certainly don't put people in prison. Right? The difference is jail is where you wait, and then prison is after the courts. So we're not responsible for the prison or the prison industrial complex, or however you want to say it, the mass incarceration. That really isn't a police issue. So the powers that be and some fairly educated people said, we're going to put individuals in these positions and we're going to move the needle. So you have your Gascon in LA, and your Jessa Boudin in up in San Francisco, and your Kim Fox in Chicago, and all these names. And forgive me, the one in New York is casing, but you have all these sort of what is termed progressive prosecutors. And they enacted these things, and they're not filing on people. And we're seeing the results in real time. I just hope someone with credibility and true desire to keep the society running is looking at this critically. And they're saying, okay, so you've told us this was the intervention. It really didn't happen in police. You were going to talk about the Washington Post, right? So the fatal force, 2015, it's 2023, all these interventions, and police still have about 1,000 use of deadly force instances. It's just, no matter what you do, this is about what you're going to get. So, okay, let's try it with these progressive prosecutors and these no bail systems. And what we're seeing now is just an increase in crime. You're running the experiment in real time. And if you're watching, you're seeing this explode. Now, the only way it changes is when society says enough is enough. And I think you're starting to see this when you have cities like Seattle and Portland saying we want to give hiring bonuses to police officers. Maybe now we're starting to see a critical mass, or what do they say? The pendulum is all the way on one side. Maybe we're starting to see this crack a little bit. When San Francisco residents vote out the progressive DA, maybe enough is enough. And we're getting away from politics and we're looking at bodies on the ground. I'll make one final point. Roland Fryer, the great Harvard economist, who's done an enormous amount of work on policing and police work, he has said that these overt hyperbolic response to bad instances have always resulted in police pulling back. And it gets what's commonly known as the Ferguson effect, right? So he's quantified this. He has said you can take any big city and you could say about 900 more homicides, in the aggregate. And then each city, you can see a mark. I will be curious because I know Roland Fryer's watching Memphis, and there is a critical incident with Mr. Nichols. And now there's going to be a pullback. There's going to be all these movements, and we're going to see crime go up and up and up. And he's going to quantify. He's going to look at this and say, here's what we do, and here's our overreaction to it. I'm going to leave you with this idea, and people who are listening on both sides of the aisle. Progress is evolutionary. It's not revolutionary. You're not going to give somebody a body-worn camera and all misconduct goes away. What you're going to do is start nudging people to act right. Mike and I know we've seen cops with body-worn cameras and we think, what the hell are you doing? Now, we've also seen a great number of instances go in the way of police because they are wearing a camera and they do have some self-regulation and some self-control. And they realize, let me hold this down because everyone's going to look at this. And I don't want to be the next YouTube video, right? So you can see helping us nudge and correct people in real time. But these prosecutors think there's going to be this lightning strike and it's going to change everything. And Rome wasn't built in a day, right? And Rome also wasn't destroyed in a day. It took these slow erosions. And that's very unsatisfying when we live in a society that is hyper immediacy. Everything is immediate. I want food. I pick up my phone and I get it. I want to send somebody money. I don't write a check and put it in the mail. I use a Venmo. Everything is immediate. And in a city, in a society where immediacy is the expectation, we are often left with unsatisfying interventions to make progress.
Mike?
Well, I just wanted to say, even in regards to the body cameras themselves, like I said, when they brought them here to the city of Memphis, and I tried to tell the officers, use it to your advantage or what have you. And I found that a lot of the accusations that were made against police officers and individuals that were going to internal affairs, they were cleared. We had more officers being cleared of incidences because the body cameras were actually showing that individuals were making unsubstantiated complaints against the officers because the officers wouldn't comply or wouldn't, I'm going to tell you this, something that pissed me off real bad. I guess I'll be pissed off all the time, but let me tell you something that pissed me off. J.B. Smiling on the city council. I see he's leading an effort now to put all of these things in place to stifle the police and their abilities to be able to police. But this is the same city council person that we have, and you can Google him, J.B. Smiley, traffic stop, Memphis, Tennessee, who falsely accused a police officer, and he's a city council person, falsely accused a police officer. Oh, he treated me so bad. He talked to me so bad. Oh, I was afraid for my life. Oh, woe is me. I can do that. But it feels so good because I'm a civilian. The director had the video pulled. The officer was so courteous to this guy that it was pitiful. He had a pistol in the car, and he said he was afraid of the police officer. He told the police officer that he had a gun in the car. And the only thing the police officer, he was making some movements, and the police officer said, "Sir, please don't do that." And what do you mean, don't do that? Well, you just said you had a weapon in your car, and I just want to make sure that you're safe and I'm safe. So therefore, please don't make any erratic movements, any sudden movements like you're moving toward the gun. Now, at this particular time, Mr. Smiley was not a city council person. He was just an attorney here in the city of Memphis. So he was running for county commission at the time. So he did this big to-do with the news media. I was pulled over by the police and they stopped me, and I was afraid for my life as a Black man in this city. And Jesus, he talked to me bad. He treated me bad. Whoa, 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 whoa. And the video revealed that none of that was true. The officer had probable cause because his windows were blacked out. So he put a tint meter on the window and showed him that he was not in compliance with the statute. So Mr. Smiley went through all of this. I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. The officer even told him, "Sir," and the officer didn't know who he was. So it wasn't something he did because he thought he was compelled to do it. And he wasn't a city councilman at the time. But the officer let him go, didn't write him a citation or nothing. Didn't even give him a courtesy ticket. Just said, "Sir, you have a good day. And I just want to make sure that, you understand." But he went to the news media because it had to be the news. He had to go to the news media because the news media would have knew about it and made these false accusations. Well, this is the same guy that you have on the city council that's leading the charge, see, to even take more authority away from the police because now he's been elected.
How does a guy like that win? You got proven to be a liar, and it's just like the Marion Barry effect. You got caught smoking crack in a hotel room, and then you got reelected mayor again.
Because you have uneducated voters, you have once again the power brokers. I say the power brokers. If you have an honest guy that's going to run, he's not going to get donations. He's not going to get money to get his name out there because people don't vote for you if they don't know you. But if someone who can bend or be bent to see some of my ways and allow me the ability, for instance, you have some businesses that are being given $95 million to build a hotel. I'm not going to call a name. You kind of know who I'm talking about. But they will contribute large amounts of money, and not just them, but I'm gonna give Michael Renee Williams III $1,500 to contribute to the campaign. I'm gonna give Michaela Williams $1,500 to contribute to the campaign. I'm gonna give Andrea Williams $1,500. I'm gonna have my cousin. I'm gonna give them. So therefore, you don't give it a whole lot of money. But BJ Smiley or JB Smiley ends up with all of this money. And I know it's not coming from Black constituents or individuals that he represents, but because he gets that money, now he can get news ads. Now he can get billboards. Now he can get yard signs. Now he can get radio ads. Whereas Mike Williams, who possibly has the citizens of the city of Memphis or Shelby County's best interest at heart, because I may be unbought and unbossed, you ain't gonna vote for me because you don't know me.
Right.
So the name they see on the ballot that they've seen all over the news, all over the commercials, all over the billboards, all in the front yards, all on the big signs is JB Smiley. So they can relate to that. It's branding, you know.
Yep.
So they, that's a young Black man and he looks like but they don't know the story about him lying because they're not fully.
Terrible.
The facts about police, how many cops are good, how many are bad. You know, if you have a large group of people in any profession, and when we touched on this a little bit earlier, you're going to have some bad apples. You know, about 3% of the US population will be convicted of a felony during their lifetime. As of June of 2020, there were currently more than 800,000 sworn law enforcement officers working in about 18,000 agencies in the United States. USA Today put together a comprehensive study of police officers and misconduct in recent years. It said that just over 1 in 10 officers are investigated for, quote, something. Out of those 1 in 10, just a quarter of the time, the alleged abuse is for excessive force. Approximately 3.6% of police officers hired turn out to be, quote, bad cops. And the big thing from USA Today's findings was that over 99% of police officers never engaged in abuse of force. You know, these facts don't exonerate the profession. They don't fit the narrative of, you know, many of the national media of systematic failures either. You know, I've made statements over the last few weeks on social media that 99% plus officers are good. You know, and while that, you know, it's true in my opinion, because 99% never engage in abuse of force, you know, like USA Today said, the actual statistical number, if you want to say good cops, bad cops, according to them, is 96.4%. And it doesn't mean there's not room for improvement. However, you know, we should be thankful that 96.4% of police officers who put themselves at risk, you know, daily for our safety, always do the right thing by the communities they serve, you know, all across the nation. Now, I know that's a lot that I wanted to read there, but I thought it was important to get those numbers out there for people that, you know, that don't buy into the false narratives that almost all cops are bad and all cops are corrupt. You know, Tom, what do you think about those actual factual numbers that, you know, came from USA Today newspaper, and how do they reflect with, you know, people that you've worked with in your long careers in law enforcement?
So the data is always interesting. Is this a 2023 study that was done?
This was 2020.
Okay, so there's going to be, I'd like to know if that was pre or post George Floyd as well. So it's always hard for me because I'm a researcher. So I want to say, what are the parameters of good and bad? What does it mean to be a good cop? What does it mean to be a bad cop? Also, there's some nuance. A good cop can do a bad thing. It's, you know, and there's a bad cop that can do good things. So it gets complicated when we start talking about this. Most people will define cops as being the, quote, an Adam Henry, you know, or an asshole, or like that cop is just an ass, or they're on a power trip. But rarely do you see just cops, you know, abusing people. And maybe it was a little bit more common in the 80s and the 90s, where cops were being a little bit more violent, a little more heavy-handed, and then reforms came in. So I would say this, it's great that there's some data that shows a lot of people are trying to do the right thing. The problem is the people on the other side, the counter argument is going to be, well, that's because you never get prosecuted. That's because no one ever finds you guilty. Or so it's not going to carry a lot of weight. What's going to help is, I think there's some good research done by Pew and Rand, and they look at the confidence in US institutions. And it'll be Congress, policing, the military, small business, mail, you know, US Postal. So I think when you get things like that, what you find is about 60% of the population think we're doing a good job or fairly good job. So, you know, that's good. We're more than half. Now, you start parsing out that data and you're going to find some interesting numbers. The Asian community, they love police officers. Chicago, LA, Asians, 80-85% confidence rate. But inner city Black communities, 30, 40%. So to me, there's something there. Now, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's perception. I don't know if it's the media. I don't know if it's the way we just talk to people, or a feeling that they have. So I don't put a lot of stock into it. I like it, right? It's good that it's out there, and at least it gives us something to discuss. But the average citizen in inner city Memphis or inner city Chicago, they're not reading this. It doesn't matter to them. And I don't want to, as somebody who's on this side of policing, I don't want to grab it and like show them, look how good we're doing.
Right.
Because, we could say the same about schools. You could say, look, mass shootings, the likelihood of your child being involved in a mass shooting at a school is incredibly low. And does that matter to Uvalde? It just doesn't matter to those parents. And look at what that did for policing. Now that I think about it, look at what that did for us, right? You had cops standing around taking people into custody who are trying to climb the fence and run into the school. Like we're not absolved of this. We have to take some ownership too.
Right.
Whereas sometimes leadership is going to come in and we have to make the hard choice. So I'll hold with that, Mike, because I'm curious what you want to say.
No. I think you're definitely right. I can make a survey say anything I wanted to say.
Yeah.
The parameters that I set is according on my target audience that I'm actually utilizing for the survey. And you're correct. If you go Mountain City, Utah, or somewhere backwater, USA, Mayberry, they're going to love the police. Because that's just the way it is. But when you do come into it, I understand that when you come into a city like Memphis, which requires a lot of policing, and they're not going to have the confidence in the police because you're going to see them have to do some of the things that, like we said, are not pretty. But that goes also back to what I stated earlier. At some point, because cities like Memphis are predominantly African-American, or if it's Chicago, or if it's Detroit, or what have you, metropolitan areas, which are predominantly African-American, then at some point, African-Americans have to say and take responsibility for what's going on in their communities, because they're heavily policed, because we're just sitting here talking about all of the cars that are being broken in, the people that are being abducted, the invasions, the robberies, the this, the that. It has to be dealt with, because if we allow it to just run rampant, then guess what? You too may be the next victim of those individuals. And then they're becoming so violent, a lot of these young people. There was a time when I policed in some of the most violent, what was considered some of the most violent communities in the city of Memphis. But even back then, there was an understanding in the streets. A lot of times when we chase people, they threw their guns down. And I will tell you, I've never shot, out of 20-some years, I've never shot anybody. Took a whole lot of people into custody. It was a different time back then. It wasn't the fact that they weren't shooting at the police, but we used some different methods. And we had a lot of community policing going on back then. So I knew a lot of the people. So sometimes when I came up against certain things, believe it or not, I would jump back in my car and drive off, and people would look at me like I was crazy. But I was going to McGarry's Market. I was going to see him eventually in the community when the odds were more in my favor. And I used to tell all the young officers, every fight ain't a fight. If the hair on the back of my neck stands up, I back out. Because that tells me something is about to go wrong. Either I'm going to hurt somebody or somebody's going to hurt me. I pulled up on porch in Orange Mound one time, and he was just, God damn it, blah, 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 blah. And I was by myself. I had got there by myself. I said, hey, man, it's your world. I'm just a squirrel trying to get him back. He looked at me and started laughing. I walked off the porch, got back in my car, and drove off. And everybody in the community, oh, Officer Williams, man, you're getting soft. You know how they do. You're getting soft, Officer Williams. But all I did was drove around the corner, called for some cars, and about 4 or 5 cars pulled up. I pulled right back around on his porch, and I said, hey, you willing to talk to me now? He said, you one of them slick people, aren't you? He said, well, you one of them slick Negroes. And he was a black guy, but he wasn't no slick Negroes, ain't you? I said, no, I just felt like if I'd have stayed here, you were going to get hurt, or I'm going to get hurt. So you ready to deal with me now? Yes, Officer Williams. We as police officers have to learn how to police smarter and not harder. We have to be able to adapt and conform to the communities that we're policing in. There's a time that you have to be hard and you have to stand your ground. But there's also times when you have to and have the ability, just like I believe in the Tyree Nichols case, it was a traffic stop. You had his tag, you knew where he lived. All of that was not called for. I thought it could have been handled a whole different way. But we as police officers have to be prudent in that we have to utilize those tools that are available to us to make our jobs a little bit easier. But for those individuals that are out here committing crimes and you got to get that ass, get it. Because there is also a time for that as well. And that's just point blank period. Now, when it comes to these studies, like I say, it's according on who's doing the studies, it's according on what the studies are for, and it's according on what they want to portray. But when you look at where the rubber meets the road, for me, I could give a damn about that study, to be perfectly honest, here in the city of Memphis. I just know that crime is through the roof. Something has to be done to deal with it. You're going to, and me being an Army veteran, you're going to have casualties on both sides. And, I do a show as well, and I tell the citizens of the city of Memphis on my show, this can be dealt with. You're not going to like it because we're going to have to go to war. And when you go to war, you're going to have casualties, some good, some bad. But eventually it will all correct itself. Now, if the enemy concedes, then you don't have a problem. But if the enemy wants to be combative, then you have to go in and take that enemy out. So that means there's going to have to be a fight, whether it be with guns, whether it be physically, and a lot of people want to go against the police because they know that's their sons, their daughters, their nieces, their nephews. It's okay when it's somebody else, but it's not okay when it pertains to my family. But see, the other thing is they start yelling and screaming that they want more policing when they become the victims. So, you have to, be an individual, like I said, and you said it, Thomas, it doesn't matter when you're those individuals in the inner city. But you got all of these retired school teachers and individuals that have done so much to be a productive part of society and to do the right things. And they need the ability to be able to live out their lives in peace and in harmony. So, nobody wants to go to war on any cost or on any front. But sometimes the president or whomever is the leader and is in charge has to say, this is where the rubber meets the road and this is where the buck stops, and it stops right here. So if you commit these crimes, we're gonna get you. It used to be a time when they would say that. Now it's not politically correct and everybody wants to go against it. But we're gonna get you and we're gonna deal with it. Bump the statistics, bump the costs, and then they need to go to the state legislature and say, we need some teeth so that we have mechanisms in place, because you don't want people to continue to go down this road. There has to be consequences for your actions. There have been consequences, but when you got guys getting locked up 20 times, I don't give a damn. I don't want to hear he needs another chance. I don't want to hear that. You got guys who have 3-4 robbery charges or assault charges or gun charges. I don't want to hear, oh, he's a victim of his environment. Damn it, I grew up picking cotton. Hello? But I wanted to make something of myself. I'm 63 years old. And a lot of times I feel as though I grew up in harsher circumstances than a lot of the people that are currently in. And if I can do it, they can do it. It's just a matter of you putting forth the effort. You talked about earlier, Thomas, how everybody want everything and they want it now. No, I had to go to college. I had to I had to make sacrifices. I had to put in the work, and unfortunately, this young society. And the other thing is people got to also think this new police department and these new police officers that we have are a reflection of society. Y'all don't want me on here. Let me get up. No, just kidding.
If everyone could remember that, police shootings are such an unfortunate part of the job of a cop, and that, the 800,000 men and women are policing approximately 340 million people across this country.
Wow.
I don't have to be a cop to know that almost every officer hopes that they never go through their career and have to discharge their weapon. I mean, it's just obvious, just like you were talking about, Mike. I'm sure that most people, would remember that when they see or encounter a police officer, they might be wearing blue every day, but they bleed red just like the rest of us. We have so much more that I want to talk about and bring you guys back. If you guys would like to come back next week, I'd love to continue this because there's so much more to talk about, not only with police, but with crime going across the country. I apologize. My screen's a little bit messed up there, so I'm frozen. Hopefully y'all are. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you, Mike.
Okay, you hear me? I know that
I see myself and Thomas on.
Yeah, I know it's going a little bit like psycho over there in the corner. So I apologize. Okay, the main thing is that you can't hear me. So
there you go.
Definitely would like to come back next week and continue this and have this a several part series. Tom, if you would tell the audience how they can find and watch your podcasts online and follow you.
Thank you for that. And I'll tell you what, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you. It's good to have conversations. That was the genesis of my podcast when I was out there in 2020 and I was on the line during civil unrest, peaceful protests and riots. I had thousands, and I'm no exaggeration, thousands of conversations, some long, some short. And I just thought there's a space for this. Most of it was just vitriol being thrown my way, but every now and again, there was a thoughtful response. I'm going to share with you one, and then I'll tell you why I launched the podcast. Just take 1 minute. Sure. A young man came up to me and said, okay, Sergeant Tom, you want to have a conversation, and all the phones are out. You want to have a conversation? I know your recruit academy. True or false? A recruit can fail the academy if they can't shoot a certain score. And I said, okay, true. He said, and there is nowhere in your recruit academy where a recruit will fail if they're not a good communicator. And I had to think about it. And I said, no, that we don't have a test that says you communicated well, you de-escalated. It's pretty standard in a domestic violence. Did you separate the people? Did you do a thorough search? Did you give them the victim identification? You did these things, but there was nothing really to teach somebody or to test the efficacy of their communication. And I said, young man, that's a fantastic point. And he said, so from my perspective, your department is very concerned about deadly force and not very concerned about good communication. And I thought, what a neat point, right? So I said, why don't you help me make this better? Why don't you help me make that change? Because that's a valid point as opposed to just calling me a racist. And so we got to talking, and he's one of these auditors that runs around and runs into, police officers and tries to get them to do silly things. And with that, I created the podcast. And I said, not everybody that's yelling at us simply hates us. There are thoughtful people out there. And I remember there were two older folks in their 50s and a taller gentleman, African-American Black man, and his wife. And he held out his hand, and I shook his hand, and he said, I've been watching you for a few hours interact with these people here. And he's like, I'm from the Black Lives Matter chapter in Dallas. And we're kind of going around just looking at how different people are handling this. And we're doing like a documentary. And I just want to say thank you for talking to us and allowing us to, it's opposed to just standing there like a robot. So I thought, okay, let's have a place where we can have these conversations, agree, disagree, challenge the system. Let's do it. And let's show people that you can still disagree in this country and not hate the person just because I see something different. So my podcast is on Stitcher, Apple, Google. It's just called Policing in America with Sergeant Tom. It's same YouTube channel. That's all that is. There's about 25 different episodes, and I try to get a bunch of different people from all walks of life. It's not just me on a rant. I have a guest every time. So if you're interested, please take a look at it. Let me know what you think. If you want to be a guest on the show, please, you could find me on all the social media under Policing in America, Sergeant Tom.
Awesome. And Mike, you also have a show that you do each week.
Yes, I do a show called Memphis 360. I used to do a show called Behind the Badge, but since I left the police association, I gave that to them and I started my own because I felt that I needed to have a voice in the community from a police perspective, a citizen's perspective, a soldier's perspective, and just a father, grandfather, an individual who is concerned about the city of Memphis, loved the city of Memphis, and who I felt, I'm going to shoot it to you straight. When I see police officers that are bad, I'm going to tell you they're bad. Because there's so often, many times, just like you were talking about, Thomas, when individuals already have a perception that because you're a police officer, you are a certain way. And they don't understand that, you know, I have Republican friends, I have Democrat friends, I have independent friends. If you're my friend, you're my friend. I may not like your politics. I may not agree with your politics, but your politics are your politics. But I'm also a believer that in this country, because we live in the best country in the world, you have the ability to believe what you want to believe as long as it does not infringe upon the rights of anybody else. And I will defend that to the death. That's what I believe. So I can agree with you on one hand and disagree with you on the other hand. And if you can't deal with that, then that's your problem. I'm not going to unfriend you because you feel a certain way about Donald Trump. Because if I did, I would probably have to shoot my son. You know what I mean? Because he, you know, he has his views. Guess what? He's a veteran. He's on the Memphis Police Department. And as far as I'm concerned, he's entitled to his views. So we have some interesting conversations, right? But it's also, I'm a Titans fan and he's a Dallas Cowboy fan. So you can also find mine on Facebook at Michael R. Williams. It also comes on YouTube on the SVP TV network. I'm on Roku, Uverse, Apple TV, all of that good stuff. And it's called Memphis 360. A lot of times we kind of deal with local as opposed to national. And it's not necessarily about police officers and all of that good stuff. It's dealing with a lot of the local issues because I support the animal shelter. I support the Greenwoods. I support the zoo, Overton Park. I support Save the Coliseum. I support all of those things. So, and I'm definitely into politics. So we have a lot of guests on the show as well that deal with those issues. So if you like, please tune in, please make comments.
And it's a very good show. It's a very good show, definitely to watch. And I was lucky enough to be a guest on, you know, Wake Up from Behind the Badge several times too, and enjoyed those times being on there with you. You know, this has been a really good start, the conversation. You know, our goal today wasn't to say to people, hey, your views are right, my views are wrong. You know, it wasn't that. It was just to get more information out there, that there's a lot of stuff that, you know, we think we know. Some things we do know and some things we don't know, and we have to learn from other people too. And this is what I wanted. I wanted to start a good conversation because not only just, you know, with crime and the police situation that we have going on here, but across the nation too and everything. And that's why I'd reached out to Tom. I found Tom on LinkedIn and saw that he was a sergeant with the LAPD and thought, you know, what a perfect guest to bring on, especially when I saw he had a podcast. I was like, wow, this is just a perfect situation here. And unlike us, you know, we talked about bringing on other guests too, because, there's other people that have good information out there that need to bring out. Last thing I will say before we go, I apologize to everybody that we did not go Facebook Live. That is my mess up. I did not realize that I did not have it set up the correct way, but this actually works out a little bit better because this is going to be able to go out to more people, because I'll be able to put this on YouTube. I'll be able to share it to other places also that I would not have been able to do just going out on Facebook Live. So if we can't figure it out how to go Facebook Live, we'll do it this way each week and just make it work, because it did work. Gentlemen, thank y'all so much for coming on today. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. And it was a pleasure, Mike, meeting you from now, and then Michael Williams, an absolute honor to hear you talk. Thank you so much for sharing all that expertise.
Thank you,
guys.
sir.
And I'll get in touch with you this week about setting up a time for next week too. Y'all have a great week.
Okay, I love it. You guys as well.
Right.
Bye.
Have a good one. Be safe.
You too.
Thank you.